How do you tell the difference between a miracle and a crime scene when you're re-looking at your own child's face? I sat on the edge of our Italian leather sofa in our condo overlooking Wacker Drive, the Chicago skyline shimmering like cold diamonds outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was 3:14 a.m. The only light in the room came from the pale blue glow of my laptop screen, reflecting off the glass of Macallan I hadn't touched in an hour. On the screen was a PDF from a private lab in Ohio, a document that had just turned my entire existence into a ghost story. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. The girl sleeping in the nursery down the hall? The one I'd rocked to sleep for 6 months? The one whose diapers I'd changed and whose tiny hands I'd kissed? Wasn't mine. My wife, Sarah, was asleep in our primary suite, her breathing steady and peaceful, oblivious to the fact that the floor beneath her feet had just ceased to exist. I felt a coldness in my chest that no heater could touch, a hollow, ringing silence that told me my life as I knew it ended the moment I clicked open. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from, what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. I didn't move for 2 hours. I just watched the sun begin to bleed over Lake Michigan, turning the water a bruised shade of purple. Sarah and I were the it couple of our circle. I was a senior partner at a top-tier architectural firm. She was a high-end interior designer with a client list that read like a who is who of the Gold Coast. We'd been married for 5 years, and when Chloe was born, I thought we had reached the summit. I remember holding Sarah's hand in the delivery room at Northwestern Memorial, whispering how proud I was of her. She had looked at me with those big, tear-filled hazel eyes and told me I was her hero. The lie started as a whisper. A few months after the birth, Sarah's work trips to Miami and New York became more frequent. She'd come back smelling like expensive gin and a cologne. I didn't recognize something woody and aggressive. She became distant, her phone always face down, her thumb hovering over the screen like a soldier guarding a trench. When I'd try to kiss her, she'd turn her cheek, citing postpartum exhaustion. But she was too exhausted to spend 3 hours getting ready for a client dinner at Maple and Ash. The breaking point was a Tuesday. I was looking for a pacifier in her designer diaper bag when I felt something hard tucked into the lining. A burner phone. I didn't open it at first. I sat there with it in my palm, feeling the heat of betrayal before I even saw the proof. When I finally cracked the code her birthday, how cliché, I saw the messages. They weren't just dirty, they were worshipful. They were from a man named Marcus, a consultant she'd supposedly been working with on a project in River North. "He has my eyes," Marcus had texted her 2 weeks ago. Sarah's reply made me want to vomit. "He has your soul too. Don't worry, the provider thinks he's the father. We're safe." The provider. That was my name in their world. I wasn't a husband or a father. I was a bank account with a heartbeat. I didn't confront her. Not yet. If I did, she'd use her family's high-priced lawyers to skin me alive in a divorce. No, I needed to be the architect of her destruction. I spent the next month being the perfect, doting husband. I bought her jewelry. I told her she looked beautiful. I even suggested we set up a massive legacy trust for Chloe. 6-month milestone, a dinner party at our home for both of our families and our closest friends. While she spent weeks planning the catering and the floral arrangements, I was meeting with a private investigator and a forensic accountant. I found out that Marcus wasn't a consultant. He was a disgraced former architect I'd blacklisted years ago for ethical violations. He was broke, living in a cramped apartment on the west side, and Sarah had been funneling money from our joint home renovation fund to keep him afloat. She was paying him to stay in her life, using my hard-earned money to subsidize her fantasy with my rival. The night of the dinner arrived. The condo was filled with the scent of lilies and roasting lamb. Sarah looked radiant in a silk cream dress, playing the part of the devoted mother as she bounced Chloe on her hip. Her parents, wealthy socialites from Lake Forest, were boasting about their brilliant son-in-law and their perfect granddaughter. "We have a special announcement," Sarah said, clinking her crystal glass against a spoon. The room went quiet. "In honor of Chloe being 6 months old, David and I want to share something special with you all." "David." She looked at me, her face a mask of pure, arrogant triumph. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd secured her future and Marcus's future with the trust fund ID supposedly signed that morning. I stood up, adjusting my tie. I felt a strange, icy calm. Thank you, Sarah. You're right. Today is about legacy. It's about the truth of where we come from and what we leave behind. I walked over to the sideboard, where 20 neatly wrapped blue envelopes sat. I had told Sarah they were copies of the trust agreement for everyone to witness. I've spent my life building things, I said, my voice steady, echoing against the high ceilings. Skyscrapers, homes, bridges. But I learned recently that if the foundation is built on rot, the whole structure has to come down. It's a matter of safety. I started handing out the envelopes. Sarah's brow furrowed, a tiny crack in her porcelain mask. David, what are you doing? Just give the toast. I am, I said, smiling at her father. I handed him an envelope. Open it, Bill. It's the result of months of very careful planning. One by one, they tore the paper. The room, which had been filled with the low hum of polite conversation, fell into a vacuum of silence. It wasn't the trust fund. Inside each envelope was a colored printout of the DNA results. A series of time-stamped photos of Sarah entering Marcus's apartment while I was at work, and a spreadsheet of every dollar she'd stolen from our accounts to pay his rent. The silence was broken by a sharp gasp from Sarah's mother. Sarah grabbed an envelope from the table, her face draining of color until she looked like a corpse in silk. David, she whispered, her voice trembling. This is a mistake. This isn't real. The lab is in Ohio, Sarah. I flew there myself to ensure the chain of custody, I said, my voice dropping an octave. And Marcus, the man you've been supporting with my money. I had my firm file a formal complaint with the licensing board yesterday regarding the consulting fees he's been collecting. He's being investigated for fraud as we speak. You can't do this, she hissed, her arrogance trying to claw its way back to the surface, even as her father looked at her with pure disgust. I'm your wife. This is our daughter. She's not mine, Sarah, I said, and for the first time, my voice cracked with the weight of the grief I'd been suppressing. And today, she stopped being yours too, at least in this house. I signaled to the door. 2 men in dark suits entered my attorneys. Sarah, you've been served, one of them said, placing a thick stack of papers on the dinner table, right next to the untouched lamb. The petition for divorce includes a motion for a temporary restraining order regarding the marital assets, and a petition to disestablish paternity. The next hour was a blur of screaming, crying, and the sound of a perfect life shattering into a million jagged pieces. Her parents, terrified of the social scandal, didn't defend her. They left without a word, her father refusing to even look at her as he walked out the door. Sarah was left standing in the middle of our beautiful living room, surrounded by half-eaten gourmet food and the cold evidence of her betrayal. She tried to play the victim, throwing a vase at me, screaming that I was a monster for doing this publicly. I didn't yell back, just watched her. I watched the woman I had loved turn into a stranger. Well, where am I supposed to go? She sobbed, clutching Chloe, who had started to cry. To Marcus, I said coldly. I'm sure he has plenty of room in that studio apartment. Though with the legal fees he's about to face, he might not have it for long. You have 20 minutes to pack a bag for yourself and the baby. My security team will escort you out. You love her, she screamed, gesturing to the baby. How can you just throw us out? I loved the idea of her, I replied, my heart feeling like a stone. But every time I look at her now, I just see the lie you told me every morning for a year. I've already called a car. It's waiting downstairs. She left in a storm of tears and curses, carrying a single suitcase and a diaper bag. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time in months, the condo was silent. I walked into the nursery. The crib was empty. The mobile was still spinning slowly, little plush clouds circling in the dim light. I sat in the rocking chair and stared at the empty space where a life was supposed to be. I had one. I'd kept the penthouse, the money, and my reputation. I had destroyed the man who tried to take what was mine and left Sarah with nothing but the truth of her own choices. But as I sat there in the dark, the victory felt like ash. I had built a masterpiece of revenge, but I was the only one left to live in the ruins. I went to the kitchen and poured the Macallan down the drain, watching the amber liquid swirl away. I took my wedding ring off and placed it on the counter. It made a small, metallic click that seemed to echo through the entire empty home. I realized then that the most painful part of a lie isn't the moment you hear it, but the moment you realize you have nothing left to believe in. The end.